All right, in this lesson, we'll talk about how to extract rows from a multi-index data frame. We'll be using the familiar loc and ix methods that we talked about in some previous module, but we'll have to modify our syntax here a little bit to make it functional with our multi-index data frame. So I'll begin by re-executing our code. And here we can see we have a multi-index index with date and country as our layers. And I'll begin by using our loc method. As a reminder, loc accepts index labels. And in this case, we have two indexes, kind of structured within our multi-index, and each one has something that can be represented as a date. In this case, our date column is actually represented as a datetime object, but as you recall, we can use the regular string syntax to extract it. And as you may recall, loc is one of those rare methods that does not take parentheses at the end. Rather, it takes square brackets. So here's where it gets kind of funky. So we need a way to feed both of our index arguments, so to speak, to the very first argument to the loc method. We need to specify a value from the date index and a value from the country index that we want to extract. But we need to pass that as a single object. Now, the default thing to do here is to use a list. But unfortunately, I think it's something due to the technical design of pandas. A list doesn't work here. So what we can do actually is pass a tuple. And as a reminder, a tuple is a Python data type that is very similar to a list. It's just immutable, which means it can't be modified after creation. So a tuple is created in Python with parentheses. So we're actually going to place parentheses as our very first thing inside those square brackets. And let's say at this point that I just want to select one of the levels of the index. Let's say that I want to start at the outside with date, and let's say I just want to put in the value of January 1st, 2010. So in double quotes within my parentheses that represents my tuple, I'm going to enter 2010-01-01. And when I execute this, what will happen is 2010-01-01 will be the only value that's selected from that outer index, that outer layer. So as I scroll down, you'll see that'll end right here. And the remaining values from my second index, which is my country index, will still be kept because I haven't specified that I want to extract a specific thing from that. If I want to extract something specific from my second layer, I have to place a comma within my tuple, so that's still within those inner parentheses, and then specify the name of the string label that I want to extract. So for example, if I want Brazil, I can type in Brazil in here. And what that's going to do is return me a series where the series index labels are going to represent the columns that exist in my original data frame, and then the values are going to represent the cell values for that column. Now in this example, we only have a single column. We have price in US dollars. But if we had, 2 or 3 columns right here to the right, there would be another row for those columns as well. And finally, if we want to extract an actual specific column or a series, in this case we only have one, but this example will work regardless. If I want to specify a column, I have to place a comma after my tuple. Remember, my tuple serves as my entire first argument. The thing that's the first argument to the loc method is always the index to the left, the horizontal index. And the second argument after the comma is the vertical label that we want to extract. The only difference here between this and a regular loc on a single index data frame is this would usually be a single value. Now we're passing it a tuple to represent multiple values. We still have to represent it as our first argument because it's still on the horizontal axis. It's still coming from this index. We just need a way to communicate to pandas that we're providing it 2 values for us to pick out horizontally. Now after the comma, we can give our second argument, which is the column label. And in this case, we only have one column, which is price in US dollars. So if I execute that, it's going to find the row label for this month, that's the outer layer, then this country, that's the inner layer, then this series, and we're going to get the result, which is 4.76. We can see it, in fact, right here. So that is valid, and you can see in this representation, we're actually going to get the multi-index represented here as well. So we can see the exact values that we selected January 1st, 2010, and Brazil. Let's just do a few more examples. Let's say I want to pull out the values for July 1st, 2015, and I'm once again going to do loc. I'll do something like loc, open my square brackets for the method. Remember, the very first argument I have to feed in as a tuple, so I'm going to enter my parentheses. And if I want July 1st, 2015, here I'm going to enter it. I'm going to get a data frame that has only the values for that date. All of the values for my second index or my second layer, which is the country, are still present. If I want to select a specific country, like let's say Chile, I can do that. That's going to get me a series that has my data frame columns and their values. And then if I want to extract a specific series, I just write it after a comma after I close the tuple parentheses. Again, unfortunately, in this data frame, we only have one column, but if there was 5 other columns, we would just write that name, whatever column we want to extract, as our second argument. And there we have the value for the price of a Big Mac in Chile on July 1st, 2015, which is $3.27. Now the IX method is going to operate very similarly. So let's try the IX method. I'm going to call IX on Big Mac. I'm going to open my square brackets as always, and then I'm going to also create a tuple with those parentheses. Let's say I want to extract the values for the first day of 2016, January 1st. Now this is going to operate a little bit differently. When I execute this, it's actually going to cut out that outer layer and just give me a single index data frame with my original nested layer, which is country present. But I can still put a comma here and put another value. So let's say I want China. That's going to give me a series, again, where the index labels represent the columns from my original data frame and the values represent the cell values for those columns. If I then want to extract a specific column, I can just write it either as a string. In this case, we have identical syntax to the loc method. Or in this case, since we can also pass integer positions in addition to integer labels, my price in US dollars column, which is my only column, my first column, has a column index position of 0. So I can also pass an argument like 0 here and get the exact same result. So again, we're going to stick with those loc and IX methods whenever we want to extract rows from a multi-index data frame. It is a little bit trickier here. It is a little bit more prone to error depending on what method you use. Just remember that in this case, the easiest solution is to pass a tuple as your first argument. That tuple is going to hold the values that you'd like to extract of your layers of your index. Pass them in the order that they appear in the original data frame. So here I have date and country, so that's the order in which I pass them into my loc and iloc methods. And then after that parentheses, which represents my tuple, I can place a comma and then write the name of my column that I want to extract. And the column name will work for either the loc or the IX example, while the IX example will also support integer-based column selection. So that's a little bit about how to extract rows from your multi-index data frame.